Hello, Frontline Family members. This is Kim Walker. You remember me from your Frontline Families training. Well, this video is a continuation of what we discussed in training, but in a little more detail because we didn't exactly have time to get into the nuts and bolts of how to use the engagement tracker. So if you can recall, the Frontline Family Engagement Tracker is a tool that is mandatory for all sites to use so that we can get an accurate and validated count of participants. If you recall, we have outputs and outcomes that determine how well our program is performing across all the sites. And so all of you all are responsible for contributing to those numbers. So let's do a recap. We want to have 1,200 veteran family members participate in our volunteer leader training, And then we want to have 2,000 veteran family members participate in our service projects. And those numbers are totally different. So we can't have any overlap of numbers. So those volunteers that were trained, those 1,200 veteran family volunteers, are responsible for recruiting 50 brand new additional veteran family members throughout the course of your program year. So you all are responsible, all the sites, for a collective of 3,200 veteran families, and this will include children and spouses. And so that range could be from 10 to 75 years old. Okay? So that's an overview of our outputs. Well, the engagement tracker is our tool for making sure that we're accurately getting at those numbers. So this video will be a tutorial and a refresher. So at any time throughout the year, you have questions about how to use the engagement tracker or what should count or what shouldn't count, you can always reference back to this video to help you out. All right, so let's get started with our presentation. So each site will receive a tracker, every site. So Hampton Roads, your tracker will be the same, but it will not talk to Hands on Jacksonville. So it's private. It's your own site. Each member, each supervisor will be given a link to access this site. The information that you give out should not be sent out to anyone else. If someone else at your location is asking for permission to look at this data, do not give it to them. This is only for members and supervisors at your site. Okay, so here we are. The tracker is a Google tracker. So that means that anything you put in is real time, it saves automatically, and it's saved to the cloud for some people that may not know what that means. So you do not store it, do not download it, do not save it on your desktop. Always click on that link, always log into Google, and that is how you can access this tracker. So down below are several tabs. And these are the tabs that you will use to navigate, enter data, and also receive data. You all, though, only have to input information on 2 tabs, just 2. The other tabs will remain locked. You can only view them. You cannot edit. I'll repeat again. These tabs below that have a lock, you can only view. You cannot edit. The two tabs that do not have a lock, those are just for you. So you can go ham on those. These, leave them alone. All right. So the important thing to know about the engagement tracker is that it tracks your volunteers by a unique identifier. And in that case, the unique identifier is an email address. Now, I know some of you will have youth participants or older members or someone that just doesn't have an email address or they don't feel comfortable giving out an email address. Perfectly fine. You just create a dummy email address for them. Okay? And the dummy address will look like this. I'm going to use Tyler as our example. Okay? So we're going to say his dummy email address is twright@frontlinefamilies His last name is Wright. His first name is Tyler. He didn't give us his phone number. We got in contact with Tyler, we're going to say in February, on February 1st. And that Tyler is a current service member's spouse. That's all you have to do on the volunteer contact tab. And you do that for every volunteer that comes to a volunteer leader training or that comes to a volunteer service project. You are going to enter this information in. So how do you even know if someone is a family member? This is very important. So on the surveys and intake forms that you give out at your volunteer leader trainings, they must complete those intake forms. This is how you get that. On the sign-in sheets at our volunteer service projects, there should be a checkbox or something where they can indicate what their family member status is. That is the only way you're going to get it. Once you collect that paperwork, you take that paperwork and input it into the tracker. Very simple. So the volunteer contact tab, self-explanatory. Well, so is the volunteer log. A log is just what it is. It keeps track of volunteer engagement and volunteer participation throughout the course of your program year. Okay, so Tyler, you're going to put in Tyler's email address. Okay, and then you're going to highlight the row above, and you're going to see a blue box. You're going to see a rectangle box and a square. You're going to scroll over the square box until you see the black cross, pull it down, and it'll pre-populate Tyler's information from the previous page. Fairly simple, right? So we're going to say on February the 5th, Tyler served for 4 hours as a volunteer during a service project. Okay, so if you can see at the top all of the tabs: email address, first name, last name, veteran status, the month, the day, hours, engagement type. There are only 2 different types of engagement. You can only be a volunteer leader or a volunteer. And then the engagement activity. There are only 2 types of activities. Either you're participating in a volunteer leader training or a service project. That's it. And then this unique column lets us know if this is their first time participating or if they participated many times. So true, which is in blue, means that this is their first time. False, which will be in black, indicates that they've volunteered in some capacity before. So again, you're going to go up to the row above, see the blue square, pull it down, and then it's going to say true for Tyler. Okay, we're going to enter Tyler in once more. Still be a current spouse, but we're going to say after Tyler went and did a service project, he was like, I've got to volunteer. So I've got to become a volunteer leader. So this time when we put in Tyler's information, you see how Google kind of automatically knew what I was typing. We're going to do the drop down again. We're going to say this time it's February 29th because this is a leap year. So we can say that. February 29th. He went to his very first volunteer leader training. And it's going to say false, right? So here's the thing. We can only count unduplicated numbers, right? So we can't count you 2 times. If you were a volunteer leader and then you served as a volunteer, we can't report that back to CNCS. However, we at Points of Light want to know because we want to know how many times a person is engaged in what they're doing. So don't be alarmed if you see true and false for the same person because one of those numbers goes to CNCS, the other number comes to Points of Light. All right, that is all you have to do. Do not enter in anything else. These fields that are in gray, do not type anything in the field. All you have to do is go up to the cell above and copy it to the cell below, so that the proper formula is there. These are formula-based fields, the ones in gray. Do not type in those fields. That's my spiel. Okay, these next tabs with the locks on it are for your viewing purposes only, not for your data entry. You only view. So this reporting outputs tab is the first tab, and this is our cumulative numbers. So in your quarterly reports, we're going to ask you numbers to date, numbers year to date. Year to date and quarterly numbers. This is your year to date numbers page. Okay? And it's only for our outputs. There will be more questions in your quarterly report that's not included right here, but this will give you a quick overview of those high priority outputs and their cumulative year-to-date numbers. The next tab, it says the unique engagement type. So this lets us know, again, there are only two ways you can volunteer. You can only be a volunteer or a volunteer leader, and that appears here. But we're doing it by your status because, again, our outputs tell us we have to have 1,200 veteran family members and 2,000 veteran family member volunteers. And so over here on our right-hand side, it'll let us know if they were civilian, the current service member, spouse, or child, the veteran, if they were a veteran, if they're a current service member, if they're a veteran child, a veteran spouse. This will fill out, like say you had a current service member child. Once you put that into the volunteer log, it'll show up here. But we didn't have that as a data entry point, so that is why it's not here now. You're only going to see the data that you've entered in so far on the volunteer log. Okay. So what we know is that we've had a total of 6 people, 6 different people have participated in some way, either as a volunteer or a volunteer leader. We've had 1 volunteer that was a civilian. We've had 1 volunteer that was a current member, spouse. We've had 1 veteran who served as a volunteer leader. We've had 1 veteran's child who served as a volunteer leader and 1 veteran spouse. Okay? So at the bottom row where it says grand total on the row, you can get the unique number of volunteers and the unique number of volunteer leaders and then their total unique participation. All right, again, you're not typing anything, okay? The next is our total engagement tab. So the unique tab, CNCS is interested in it. The total tab, Points of Light is interested in it. So this looks a little bit different. As you see on the bottom, our grand total is 8. And that is because we had Tyler, who served as a veteran, who's a current member spouse, but he served as a volunteer and a volunteer leader. We also have Janae. And Janae is a veteran spouse, and she served as a volunteer and a volunteer leader. So that makes our grand total 8. Okay? It's very simple. So if we're asking you in your quarterly report, how many unique volunteers have you had? This will tell you unique. If we ask you how many total, this will give you the total. Very simple. Okay. So the next is our unique monthly. And so again, we have quarterly reports. And so our quarters are broken down like every 3 months, I think, right now. So you'll have January, February, March is a quarter. April, May, June is a quarter. July, August, and September, those are quarters. And so when you look, our months are not in alphabetical order at the top. So you're going to have to actually pay attention to say what's April, May, June. They're in alphabetical order, not in chronological order. That's what I'm trying to say. All right. So the total and unique is going to tell us true and false. Remember from our volunteer tab. So false means that they've participated before. True means it's a new person. And so for February, it said we had 2 who volunteered before and 1 unique. In January, we had 2 unique. In May, we had 1 unique. In November, we had 1. So keep that in mind as you are going through and doing your information. Okay, now this is our monthly. So again, we've had a total of 8, remember? So we've had 2 volunteers in February and one volunteer leader. So this is going to calculate our total, not just our unique ones. All right, this is our engagement hours. So in your quarterly report, I'm going to ask you how many hours, how many volunteer leader service hours for service projects, how many for volunteer trainings. This is that tab that we've had 14 volunteers and they serve, volunteers served 14 hours just in service projects. And then we had 4 hours where volunteer leaders also served in service projects. So it gives us our hours. This is individual dosage, meaning for every person that you put in, it'll tell us how many times they volunteered and how many times they were a volunteer leader. So we can look at Janae, for example. She was a volunteer leader once and a volunteer once, so twice. The same for Tyler. He was a volunteer once and a volunteer leader once. He's got 2, hence our grand total of 8. And that's it. These lock tabs, you don't have to touch them. They will automatically populate for you. All you're doing is viewing. The only tabs that you are responsible for entering data are the volunteer contact tab and the volunteer log. That's it. If it's in gray, don't touch it. Just pull down the formula from the cell below and it will pre-populate for you. Do not type in these cells. And also remember that the email address is the unique identifier. So everyone has to have an email address. If they don't provide you with one, create one. Make sure that the one you create for that volunteer is consistent and you're using that same email address all the time for the same person. That's the engagement tracker. Thank you for your time. Again, if you have any questions, please go back and review this tutorial. You can contact me, Kim Walker, at kwalker@pointsoflight.org. Until the next time, happy reporting.